A man woke up in the middle of the night and he turned on his bedside camera. He recorded something that made him regret it immediately. But what was it? Well, today we're going to find out. Welcome back to my channel. You clearly have no idea how good this video is going to be. So, let's just get into it. It all started when the man set up his bedside camera. This was a regular thing for him to do because he had sleep apnea. The camera was actually required by his doctor so they could monitor his sleeping patterns throughout the night. However, he would also use it to record his dreams. As most people know, it's almost impossible to remember your dreams. But this man had found a way. By recording himself while asleep, he was able to look back over the footage and see exactly what he had dreamed about. And to be honest, it had been working great until one particular night. The thing with this man's videos is that they weren't like normal people's videos. When you sleep, you make all sorts of weird noises. Things like sleep talking, sleep breathing, and even sleep screaming. This guy did all of those things, which made his videos absolutely wild to watch. Some nights were boring, and some nights were full of action. It all depended on what this guy had been dreaming about. But this one night was definitely not boring. It was just another day for the man who had gotten used to living with sleep apnea. At first, it hadn't been easy, but now he had a routine that helped him sleep better. He would always put his mask on at the exact same time every night. Then he would lay down in bed and wait for sleep to take him away. But this night was different. While he was drifting off to sleep, he felt a strange sensation in his chest. It was like an invisible hand was squeezing the life out of him. In a panic, he ripped off his mask and he began to struggle for air. But there was nothing there. All he felt was pressure crushing him. He tried to call for help, but no sound came out of his mouth. Then suddenly he sat up in bed, gasping for air. But that's when he noticed something strange. His bedroom door was wide open, something that he never did before he went to sleep. Now, anyone who has sleep apnea knows that the condition can sometimes make you do bizarre things that you wouldn't do if you weren't in a dead sleep. And that's what must have happened here. He had sleepwalked outside and left the door open. But this was only the beginning of his problems. After regaining his composure, he got back into bed and put his mask back on. But now he couldn't fall back asleep. He kept tossing and turning in bed. And each time he did, he felt that same pressure in his chest. But maybe it was all in his head. Maybe he had just imagined the whole thing. That was probably the best case scenario. He really hoped that was true, but there was only one way to find out. He needed to go through his footage and check to see what had happened. When he woke up the next morning, he turned on his camera to review last night's footage. But what he saw made him regret recording in the first place. For starters, the entire video was shaky because he had been moving around a lot in his sleep. Then there was the part where he wasn't in bed. The camera showed him sleepwalking through his house, but it didn't stop there. After he walked out the front door, he disappeared from view. The camera couldn't see him anymore because it had no battery. This is where things took a turn for the worse. The camera had automatically shut off when it lost connection with its main power source, meaning that it hadn't recorded anything else that happened that night. Unfortunately, this meant that there was a large gap in the footage, one that would never be filled. Unless he checked his security cameras, there was no way to know what had happened after he left his house. But why bother? He had enough proof that something strange was going on. He should probably show this video to his wife. If she had been home, she would have witnessed the entire event. She would have seen him walk out the front door and she would have stopped it. But she was away visiting her mother, so he had no one to turn to. He decided to call his neighbor and ask them if they had seen anything suspicious. They said they would keep an eye out, but he knew that they were probably just doing this out of politeness. There was no way that anyone would believe this story. He was a grown man. Why would he need to go outside in the middle of the night? There was only one reason: sleep talking. That's what he had been doing. Somehow he had managed to convince himself that he had to leave the house. And he was lucky that he had recorded the event because now he could prove that he hadn't just been making things up. His sleep talking had gotten him into a lot of trouble in the past, but never anything this bad. He was starting to feel crazy. What if it wasn't Slade talking? What if someone or something had forced him to go outside? But this was just a stupid thought. No one could force their way into his house, especially not in the middle of the night. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe a noise outside had woken him up. That would explain why he was sleepwalking. Something had disturbed him, so his body reacted by making him go outside. But once again, he was wrong. He looked at the rest of the footage and he realized that he had been sleepwalking during a particularly intense part of his dream. In other words, it wasn't a noise that had woken him up. It was a nightmare. And to be honest, this made things much worse. If he had been sleepwalking due to a nightmare, then why was he still in his pajamas? Shouldn't he have been outside naked? After all, that's what sleepwalkers often do. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't a nightmare. This was a premonition. He had somehow managed to predict the future. Just think about it. In his dream, he felt pressure in his chest, just like he did in real life. Then he sleepwalked outside. He must have been trying to escape whatever was chasing him, but it was too late. The entity had reached him in the end. And unfortunately, he had been so scared that he forgot to change into his pajamas. Now, he was faced with two choices. Either he accepted that he had predicted his own death, or he continued searching for answers. Well, there was only one choice for our protagonist. He had already experienced death in his dream, so there was no way that he was going to give up, not without a fight. So what did he do next? Well, to find out, stay tuned for more updates.